Hey guys, it's Adrian over BHA here bringing you a new video. So the great folks over at Reolink sent me over a couple of their new dual lens cameras, the Reolink Duo. So they sent me over their PoE version as well as their Wi-Fi wired version. So today we're going to basically take a look at that PoE version and see what all we could do with it. It just released this week for pre-sales, and so it's definitely something that you want to jump on if you're interested in this type of camera. Here we go. So there's basically going to be four different models of this camera. The PoE version, the Wi-Fi wired version, the Wi-Fi battery version, which will be able to be powered by a solar panel if you prefer, or it's rechargeable. And then lastly, the 4G battery version, which is also going to be allowed to be solar powered or rechargeable in that sense as well. So we're mainly going to focus this video on the PoE version. Just for me, it's a little bit easier to install and to kind of show you guys. It will be a similar setup for both the PoE and that Wi-Fi wired version. So we'll kind of do our focus mainly on that. As we dive a little bit deeper, we'll take a look at the specs and whatnot, but let's go ahead and dive right in.
All right, let's kind of go over everything we're going to cover in this video. So of course, for starters, we will unbox the cameras. Once we do that, then we will get the camera installed, and I'll kind of walk through that just a little bit. It's a pretty easy install for the most part. After it's installed, we'll get it added into the Reolink app on our phone. Since we've kind of been doing this on some of the other Reolink cameras, we're going to go ahead and get it connected into my NVR, which is actually a Hikvision NVR. Once that's done, we'll get it added into Home Assistant and kind of show you how you can go about doing that. Lastly, I'll just kind of go over my final thoughts. So let's get started. All right, so I'm trying to save a little bit of time because I don't want this video to get out of hand. I've had a couple of lengthy videos recently, and it's a pain trying to put together a long video. So here we've got both cameras being unboxed at the same time. Obviously, it's going to be about the same for both of them. In the bottom corner there is the Wi-Fi version, and in the top corner is the PoE version. So just out of the box, everything is pretty much the same. You get your instructions, everything. On the Wi-Fi version, you'll see next you get the antennas for the camera. Then basically once we get in, we get the power supply for the Wi-Fi wired version. They both will come with network cables, some mounting brackets. You get an extra long power cable for the Wi-Fi version. Cameras are pretty heavy duty. They're pretty solid. This is probably one of the heavier IP cameras that I've messed with. So it's I was kind of surprised at how big and bulky it actually is. Something that you'll want to keep in mind whenever you're finding a good spot to mount this thing, because it is kind of interesting to mount, and we'll kind of cover that later on in the video as well. But this is what it looks like. You can see both lenses there. On the bottom of it is a spot for the SD card. You'll get your screws and everything, as well as your waterproof connectors for the network cable. And it even comes with a screwdriver to help you get everything installed. But that's pretty much it for unboxing the camera. Let's move on and kind of go over some specs. All right, so as far as specs go, most of the specs on all four of these versions of the camera are the same, but there are a few differences. So for the PoE and the Wi-Fi wired version, you get 25 frames per second. I know on the battery powered it drops significantly just because obviously it would require a lot of power to be able to handle all the different frames per second. It's got 150 degrees field of view. So spanning across both lenses, that's the horizontal view there, so that's pretty good. It does have the infrared night vision. It also has a spotlight, so you'll be able to turn that on and off or activate it via motion. It's got two-way audio, so you will be able to listen in as well as talk back and forth so that the other person can hear you. The SD storage on this thing is 256 gigs max. So if you're looking for local storage there using a micro SD card, just kind of keep that in mind. Now, I already mentioned the frame rate a little bit. Like I said, it's 25 frames per second for the mainstream. The substream says it's only 4 frames per second. So that's significantly lower on the substream. This will support OnVIF and RTSP, so we should be able to get this thing set up in the NVR and, of course, in Home Assistant as well. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step and get this thing installed. All right, so we're going to try to get this thing installed. As you can see, I currently have a PTZ camera in this corner. It looks like it's being guarded by bees, so that should make this installation fun. But we're going to basically replace it with this dual lens camera. The mounting bracket is a little bit different, so this should be interesting on how we're going to get this thing set up. But basically, it should cover this whole area here. So we'll kind of see what all we get with this new dual lens. So here it is. I got it mounted. I had to kind of mount it on the side versus mount it from the top. There just wasn't an easy way to do that. So we mounted it here on the side and kind of angled it to cover the majority of the area. And then I'm just going to have to get something to cover up that big hole, which was once covered by the PTZ camera. So it shouldn't be a major issue, but it is kind of a pain having to have such a different setup as far as mounting it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step and get this thing added into the app. All right, so adding it into Reolink's app, their cameras are always pretty simple to get installed. So as you can see, it's kind of already listed there down at the bottom, just not completely added yet. It wants me to scan in the QR code. So that QR code is found on the bottom of the camera. I know a lot of times you'll get a copy of the QR code in the box. I did not see one there, so just keep that in mind. I don't know if the full production version of these cameras will have an extra QR code or not, but it is on the bottom of the camera. So we scanned it straight from there, and as you can see, it kind of came in, wants me to create a new password for it. So we'll do that here. We'll give it a name. I'm just going to call this one Front One Dual, since it's a dual lens camera. I have another camera on the front as well, so I usually have it called Front One and Front Two, so this one will be a little bit different. But basically that's it. It is now added into the app. And just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like in the camera itself, here is a daytime and nighttime viewing of the camera feed. And I'll walk across the camera from one side to the other, and you can kind of see as I come across. But it gets a pretty decent coverage. I'm pretty pleased with it overall. It basically covers the entire area that I was using to cover with that PTZ camera. But of course, it is able to cover it all at once. So that kind of makes it nice. Just looking at the configuration options in the Reolink app, one thing that you will want to note, and I'll probably reiterate this again at a later date, most of the time you can mount these cameras like from up above, like on the eave of the house, and be able to flip the camera depending on how you mount it. This camera does not give you the ability to flip the camera image. I'm not really sure why. I don't know if it's just because of the fact that it's dual lens and they don't want to have to mess with it. I really don't know. but just keep that in mind when you're mounting the camera. Nonetheless, let's kind of go through the various options here under. If you click at the top, you can look at all the device info for the camera itself. If you go under display, you can modify various options for each camera's display. So if you need to update the brightness, you want to remove the watermark. If you want to look at the quality options, there's clear and fluent. You can set the anti-flicker to something different. I'm keeping it at the default, which is 60 hertz. All right, and of course I want the brightness to be synced between both cameras. All right, so you can modify the volume if you want. Again, I'm going to kind of leave it all as the default. You can set your sensitivity for the motion detection, as well as like a detection zone if you want. And then, of course, you can modify minimum and maximum object size as well. But other than that, camera recording is turned on. If you have an SD card, of course, it will be recording to that. You can enable push notifications and set it up to send you email alerts as well. It does have a siren that you can turn on if you want. It's pretty loud. I was actually pretty impressed. Definitely a security deterrent there. But that's pretty much it for the majority of the settings and options that you have available to you here within the Reolink app. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step and we'll get this thing connected into my Hikvision in VR. All right, so let's get this thing added into my MVR. So I have a Hikvision rebranded MVR. It's a LaView. It's a 16 channel, works great, but of course it doesn't necessarily cooperate with Reolink cameras. But we can add them via OnVIF. And that's what we're going to look at here. So if I go under configuration to camera management and then under IP cameras, now because this is a dual lens camera, in order to see both lenses, I will have to basically tie up two channels on my MVR. Which is not a big deal. Obviously, I would already be tying up one anyway, so I'm going to tie up an additional one to cover that second lens. Let's see. IP camera 4 is where I added one of the camera lenses. So here I just basically put in the IP address of the camera on my home network. I set the protocol to OnVIF. Now, by default, Reolink's OnVIF port is 8000. So unless you change it, that's what you'll put here. And then under channel number, this is where you decide which lens you're going to access. So for the left lens, it'll be channel 1, and for the right lens, it will be channel 2. The username is admin, and the password is the one that you created whenever you first set up the Reolink camera. I think everything else you can kind of leave as the default or auto. But basically, you'll do it again. Let's see, I have the other one letted down here a little bit further. And of course, it's set as channel 1. So there's one for channel 1 and one for channel 2. That covers both cameras. And if we jump over to my iPhone where I have the Hikvision app, you can see down there in the bottom corner, I have both cameras. It almost looks like one continuous camera feed. There's a little bit of a difference there between the two lenses. That's basically because I don't think I have it completely level, but it does look pretty nice and comes across pretty well. You click on either one of these it jumps right in and shows you the camera feed, and it works pretty well. But that's it as far as getting it added into my NVR. So now I can basically set it up to record that feed, and we'll be able to keep up with it in my NVR that way. Let's move on to the next step, and we'll get this thing added into Home Assistant. All right, so adding it into Home Assistant, as always, is pretty simple as well. Under integrations, if we just go to our OnVIF integration, I've already got it added, but if you were to hit that plus down at the add integration down there in the corner, you could type in OnVIF and it would basically put in that same information that we just did for the NVR. You put the IP address of the camera, your username and password that you use to access it, as well as that OnVIF port, which is 8000. When it comes in, you can see it actually pulls in both camera streams. So there is the main stream for both lenses. So if we were to add those into Loveless, basically we could go over here. We'll set up something under my test tab here. We're going to actually add a horizontal stack. And then from in there, I'm going to add 2 picture glances. So for one, it'll be that first camera. We'll just say 1A. And we'll point it at that mainstream there. And then let's see, we'll remove the 2 sensors. Now we're going to add one more. We'll add another picture glance. We'll call it 1B. And point it at that second camera feed. We can save it. And as you can see, there they both are. You click on these, everything looks good. Everything is running quite well. But that's it as far as getting it added into Home Assistant. So now we can view both cameras right there in Home Assistant. And if you set it up like that with the horizontal stack, then they come in side by side. Everything looks pretty good. Let's move on to that last step and we'll talk about our final thoughts. All right, so I actually really like this camera. My biggest pet peeve is the mount. I don't think they thought it through very well as far as how you would be able to mount it and the best way to do that. So many IP cameras nowadays come with some sort of ball joint to kind of rotate the camera however you want. This one does not do that. So you can kind of go up and down and side to side, but you can't really turn it every direction that you would want. So basically, if you're going to mount it or when you mount it, you have to mount it perfectly. Otherwise, you're talking about you possibly pulling the mount all the way off, making new holes. I mean, it really just becomes a nightmare. So, really disappointed on how they came up with this mounting option. And hopefully that they will send out some alternatives when this thing goes into production, or at least allow you to purchase a different kind of mount, maybe some sort of swivel mount that would allow you to kind of turn it whatever direction that you want. Nonetheless, um, overall, I thought it was a really good camera. It has pretty good coverage, 150 degrees. That's a pretty decent range, just without having to move like a PTZ to kind of hit all those different areas. So I really like that feature. And of course, it has the spotlight and the siren and all the other features that you get with all the newer Reolink cameras as well. So that's a pretty awesome feature as well. So I'll have some links in the description below so that you can jump over to Reolink's website and check out these cameras for yourselves. And if you're interested in ordering them and everything, but definitely worth checking out. If nothing else, just seeing what the options are available to you and what those prices currently are.
As always, I want to thank everybody for donating to my Buy Me a Coffee link. Every little bit helps. If you haven't had a chance, jump over to my spring merchandise page and check out all of the Burns home automation merchandise. If you're interested in VPN service, take a look at IP Vanish. I'll have a link in the description below so you can jump over to their website and see what deals they're currently running. If you're interested in buying and selling stock or maybe cryptocurrency, hit the link in the description below and head over to Robinhood. If you sign up with that link, you and I both will get a free share of stock. It's a win-win for both of us. If you liked the video, please subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comments below. As always, if there are any videos out there that you would like to see that I don't already have out there, let me know in the comments as well, and I'll see if I can't get something put together for you guys. Otherwise, I'll see you guys around.